Now that he didn't say that, that's my idea of unattainable surplus, and this is called Keynes versus Hayek versus Infokemp. So this will be part two of the video now. So we're now dealing with the paradox of whether people are rational or not, and who decides what plans are taken forward. You know, in the EconStories rap battle video between Keynes and Hayek, there was the debate between Hayek and Keynes on the central planning issue. Now, Keynes believed in the Fabian incrementalism and Fabian doctrine of a professional people planning for the rest of the economy and the rest of the people and this is not to do with socialism. This is an older doctrine than socialism. The Fabian way of doing things dates back to H.G. Wells and the Fabian school, but they are rather left-wing people today. Now, Friedrich von Hayek was talking about libertarianism and the neoclassical economics of everybody being able to plan, and it seems quite egalitarian in the video. But as my critique, as I have to be making a critique of both people, they both will lead to, as I believe Pareto said, an elite emerging through that situation. If you take Keynes's way of doing things, you get a democratically elected elite because the government is taking the role of being that elite within a democratic framework. But if you take von Hayek's political economy model of leaving the market completely unfettered, and letting the market try and get to equilibrium, which would be in a perfect free market, which Ron Paul would be advocating, then the government has no elitism about. There's no elitism about the government, as the government is very limited. But a new elite, if Pareto is correct, would emerge through capitalists, and capitalists would decide, because they have a greater magnitude of stock, i.e. capital, in the market, and they would distort the market just as the government would distort the market. So the problem is getting rid of elites within the government or within the market, who will be distorting the market so that it doesn't get to full equilibrium in a perfect free market. And also both theories, if you take communism as a theory or free market fundamentalism as a theory, they both assume that you have an equal starting point, like a race. You know, in communism everything is shared out equally, but that doesn't work because of human nature, because human nature is greedy. But if you take the free market system, then it assumes that everybody will start at an equal point, which is of course not true, because of the inherent inequality in the capitalist system from which it is starting off on, or the inherent inequality within a communist system where you have a vanguard party which is dictating to the rest of the people. So it's difficult to get from a communist situation to a free market, and it's difficult to get from a capitalist situation to a free market. So both Keynes in the video and von Hayek are arguing their points, but von Hayek's argument is quite theoretical. It's quite nominal. It's not positive, in my view. That might be my bias, but that is what I think. He's talking in terms of what should be and not what is. And Keynes was talking about that he takes everything in a case by case basis. Now that is of course artistic license on the part of John Papaloa and Russ Roberts in making the video that way. I'm very much aware of Keynesian economics because I was raised by through economics on the Keynesian model, and I'm quite aware of what von Mises said, who was the tutor of von Hayek. But what von Hayek said, I can only take from the video because I'm not very aware of his work. That's an admission on my part. But if we take what he said if you take what John Papalow and Russ Roberts said in their video on von Hayek, then he is arguing for the market being the dominant force. Now, Keynesian economics does have a dark side, just as much as von Hayek's has a dark side, because, of course, Malthusian economics, which was the forerunner of Keynesian economics, said that there should be wars to reduce the population because of the inherent population. Now, Keynes never said this. He only made the point that during times of war, GDP did rise, and he was an advocate of peace. Keynes was an advocate of peace, and criticised the reparations of the Versailles Treaty, which meant that there would be a revenge by the Germans on the Anglo-Saxon powers and France, and he said that revenge would not be slow, and he was correct because Adolf Hitler arose. But Friedrich von Hayek, of course, fought in the First World War, and his viewpoint of what caused the war influenced his way of doing economics. So you can see both men would be kindred spirits in the sense that they neither wanted war. But what would I say is likely to cause a modern war? I believe that if you're taking Keynesian economics Keynes was born and raised during the time of the British Empire, and he was trying to take a middle road, in my view, between social democracy and capital, which is capitalism with a social market which produces to the point of maximum social benefit, and imperial nationalism. And that's a very important point. Whether Keynes was a ardent nationalist or not, I'm not sure, but it seems to me that he would have been influenced by the British Empire, his existence, in his opinions, and being able to produce a loose monetary policy is very much linked with who's got the dominant currency at the time, the reserve currency, and that was the pound at the time of the British Empire. So you could afford to borrow money off of creditors because you could default on that money if you really got into trouble in order to fight a war, such as the Second World War, which he worried about happening anyway. So they were able to do that. In the terms of modern times, you're seeing a similar situation with the Federal Reserve, where they're exporting inflation out of their economy because they have the reserve currency, they have the imperial status of Pax America, and they believe that they can export all their inflation to Europe and China, and people will pay for it by buying up US government bonds. Now, of course, the Bank of England after the Second World War was nationalised, and so you see a swathe of nationalisation, which is bringing more of the economy into the public sector. To me, this means that there's more democraticization of the market, because your influence on the market is not just dictated through what you buy and what you sell and what you consume, but also on your votes. And that is very important, because if you're voting to put a government in place that will do that, which will nationalise industries, whether it works or not, you are influencing the market through your vote.